Hey everybody, it's Dennis Brown with FreightBrokerBootcamp.com, and I want to welcome you. For those of you that are getting logged in a little bit early, for those of you that have been waiting for this webinar to get started, I want to give you a big thumbs up and let you know that we're going to be starting in just a few minutes. But I'm going to wait. There's still a whole bunch of people that are logging in, and you know how that goes. Everybody's hustling to get in here. So I'm going to chat for just a second here while we get everybody logged in and ready to go. And then we're going to rock this thing out. So today we're going to be talking about the top 10 mistakes to avoid when starting your freight brokerage or freight agency. Now, this experience comes from over 10 years of building a brokerage hands-on. So, I was a guy who had absolutely no experience in logistics when I started back in 2003. Went on to grow that company to over $80 million in sales, was very, very blessed. So these are lessons that I've learned along the way. Some of these lessons have literally cost me millions of dollars in mistakes along the way. And one of the best ways to learn is to learn from other people's mistakes. So I put this webinar together so that I could share the top 10 mistakes to avoid when starting a freight brokerage or freight agent. So we're going to get started in just a second. Hold tight. We're going to get started in just a minute. Oh, hey, before we get started, I almost forgot. For those of you that stick around to the end of this webinar, if you stick around all the way to the end, I'm expecting this thing's probably going to be 30 to 40 minutes long. I'm going to have a live Q&A at the very end of this webinar. That means you can submit your questions live, and I'm going to answer them online. So for those of you that have questions and you're dying to get them answered, make sure that you write questions along throughout the presentation, write them down, jot them down, because you're going to have an opportunity to ask them at the end of this training. The second thing is, if you're around all the way to the end, if you stick with me to the end of this webinar, I'm going to make you a very special bonus offer that you are absolutely not going to want to miss. But you have to be live or streaming at the end of this webinar in order to qualify for that special bonus offer. So, and before we get started, do me a favor, guys. I'm logging in from the Buffalo, New York. I'm in Western New York area. Tell me where you're logging in from. Give me the city and state. Type it in the chat box and hit submit. Let me know where you guys are logging in from. It would be great to see where everybody's coming in from. It's always amazing where people log in from. I have people coming in from foreign countries. I have people coming in from South America. I have people coming in from Europe. I have people from all over the country that have logged in to listen to these webinars. Now, obviously, it's mainly the United States. And so some of the people are coming in right now. We've got Jeff from Boston. We've got Maureen from Pittsburgh, PA. We've got Martin from Baltimore. We've got Ray from Rochester. We've got, who else we got here? We got Jeff from Sacramento. We've got Javier from Miami. We've got, who's that? Let's see, let me pronounce that. We've got Julio from Dallas. We've got Jeff from Lubbock. We've got Steve from Chicago. We've got Joe from Denver. And we've got Mark from Atlanta. So welcome, welcome, welcome. If I didn't give you a shout out, I'll try to give you a shout out later. But again, if you stick with me to the end of this webinar, we're going to be doing a live Q&A, and we're also going to have a very special bonus offer. So stick with me. We're going to get started in just a minute. Hold tight. In the meantime, why don't we do this, guys? Why don't you close your office doors, turn off your phones, and get ready to rock and roll? Because you know what? I'm chomping at the bit. We've got a lot of information. Everybody else is just going to have to get caught up. So here we go. What are we talking about today? Again, the top 10 mistakes to avoid when starting your freight brokerage or freight agency. And before we dive into this, I think it's important you understand a little bit about me. Who am I? Who is this guy who you've probably never met, may have never heard of before? Who is he to come in here and start talking to me about how to build a successful freight brokerage or what mistakes to avoid? Well, let me give you a little bit of a quick background. I've been an entrepreneur for over 20 years. Started my first business back in the early 90s. And since then, I've been very, very blessed. I've built 3 multi-million-dollar companies in my career. I started my freight brokerage back in 2003. Like I said before, I had absolutely no experience. Matter of fact, you probably have more experience right now than I do in trucking and logistics, and went on to grow that business to over $80 million in sales, and was blessed to sell that company to pursue some other ventures. Along the way, my company had been ranked by Inc. magazine as one of the fastest growing privately held companies in America, and one of the top 100 fastest growing logistics companies in the country. Now, just so you know, Inc. magazine is a national publication. You go buy it on the newsstands. It talks about business growth, and the way you get ranked in that is what they do is they go out to all the privately held companies and they rank them based upon their last 3 years growth. And so you have to submit, audited financials and all this sort of stuff to them in order to even qualify for the Inc. 500. And what they do is they take a percentage of growth over the last 3 years, and then they rank you. And we were ranked as one of the fastest growing privately held companies in America 7 times. So we were truly, truly blessed. I'm also the owner of FreightBrokerBootcamp.com, which is, one of the most comprehensive and cost-effective online freight broker and freight agent training programs online. We've trained over 3,700 students since 2006. So that's a little bit about me. I say that, I'm not bragging. I just want you to understand who you're getting the information from. Again, there are a lot of people online with a lot of things to say, some of which I agree with, some of which I don't. And so it's always important that you do your research and understand who you're hearing it from. Have they done what I'm looking to do, or are they just some guy out there selling some product or service and they've never actually built a successful business? So I can tell you again, once again, I've built 3 multi-million-dollar companies and I've been truly, truly blessed. So now we're going to dive into something, a little bit of housekeeping beforehand. I think it's really important that before we dive into these materials, we have a variety of different types of people. We've got people that are truck drivers and owner operators and spouses of truck drivers. We've got dispatchers. We've got people who have freight agents and brokers, and we've got people who have no experience in trucking and logistics that are on this webinar. And so it's important that you understand the difference between a freight broker and a freight agent. Let me start with, what is a freight broker? A freight broker, in its most basic form, is an intermediary that brings together shippers needing transportation logistics services and asset-based motor carriers, also known as trucking companies, that actually perform the service. So they make a marriage, right? They bring shipments together with carriers, and that's how they make their money. Okay, so freight brokers are required to, get their freight broker authority. They establish credit with shippers. They do the invoicing. They pay their carriers. They have insurance. They assume the risk for credit and all that jazz. So they're the licensed entity. Okay, so that's what a freight broker is. So a freight agent, what exactly is a freight agent and the difference? A freight agent is someone who's typically an independent contractor who works under a licensed freight broker, but is not required to get a bond or an authority or a license, doesn't have to take any sort of a test, and they're typically paid between 50 and 70% of the profit per load to help shippers move freight from point A to point B. So that's the difference between a freight broker and a freight agent. Really important that you understand, freight agents are not responsible for invoicing or credit or paying carriers or bad debt or any of that. That all falls under the broker. So know this, there's a great opportunity on both fronts to become a freight broker or a freight agent. Part of what you'll learn today, or you'll figure out today, is which one may be better suited for you. So let's dive into the material, and without further ado, let's jump into number one. Number one of the biggest mistakes that I see regularly in the logistics industry, in almost all industries, but particularly in the freight brokerage and the logistics industry, is not finding a niche, not trying to be a niche player. You notice the picture here, right? Pretty comical. Happy Hal's proprietor. And he is what they call a jack of all trades, master of none. And in the freight brokerage business, this equals failure. So let me describe to you what a jack of all trades freight broker tries to do. He'll come in and try to move freight from any point to any point on any type of equipment no matter what. So if he has a customer call him and he has a load, they have a load from Regina, Saskatchewan to Dallas, Texas, and it's a flatbed load, he'll work on it, try to find carriers, and basically pull his hair out until he tries to cover that load. And then another shipper might call them and say, hey, I need a van load from Jacksonville, Florida to Baltimore, Maryland. And then all of a sudden, he'll chase that freight. He'll chase that lane or that type of equipment. And the problem with that, of trying to be a jack of all trades, master of none, in the logistics industry, is because it's impossible to be good at everything. Okay? You're much better off specializing in a few things that you do well than trying to do a lot of things that you do average or poorly. And so the way to determine, there's several ways you can determine a niche. I'll give you a couple of hints here really quick. You know, niches come in all shapes and sizes. And for example, you know, you can use the equipment type as a niche. So for example, you know, you can focus in on flatbeds or vans or reefers or heavy haul equipment, any number of different types of equipment that are out there. There are many, many different types of equipment, but you can specialize and find a niche centered around equipment. You can also focus in on a niche that centers around products or industries. For example, you know, the produce industry is a very popular industry with brokers. The steel industry, you know, building supplies, plastics, bottled beverages, heavy equipment, food. You know, there's a lot of different niches based on products or industries that you can go into. You can also focus in a niche based on geography. So for example, when I first got started, you know, we were very niche in a region. So we were focused on Northeast outbound. If it picked up in the Northeast, like New York, New Jersey, all the way up through, you know, Connecticut, Mass, you know, New Hampshire, up in that area, up in the Northeast, and it was going outbound, either west or south, that was our geographical niche, okay? So for example, maybe you are in Texas and you're going to focus on Texas outbound freight or Texas inbound freight or Chicago outbound or something that's lane specific, or maybe you're going to focus in on cross-border freight from the Northeast to Canada or Canada to the US. I mean, there's a variety of different niches that you can find. And then last but not least, you can have a hybrid of any of those. So you could have equipment type and you could have geography, you could have products, and you could have different lanes. So there's a lot of different ways to find a niche. But one of the biggest mistakes is to try to be a jack of all trades, master of none. Your office, your business, and your life will look much like this mess on the screen right here. And pretty comical, so I threw that picture up there because I really thought that that would resonate with you guys. So, number two is not treating your carriers, okay, the motor carriers and the trucking companies and the drivers, like your best customers. This is a huge, huge mistake. So I put this picture up here because it says, as you can see, customer satisfaction is up considerably since phasing out the complaint forms. And I just thought that was a funny cartoon, and it really kind of hit the mark when it comes to how most brokers and agents treat their carriers. You know, they don't treat them like partners. They don't treat them like equals. They don't treat them like their best customers. And that's a huge, huge mistake. And the reason why I say that is because ultimately, you know, you can't, as a broker, as an agent, you're going nowhere fast without your carriers. You know, you can have all the freight in the world, but if you don't have good carriers to haul that freight, you're going nowhere fast. In the reality, as a broker and as an agent, you really have two customers you need to serve. One is the shipper and one is the carrier. Those are the customers you really need to serve. Now, granted, you know, the carriers are not paying you, but the reality is you need to treat them like they're your best customers, like they're a partner. And, you know, and once you start treating your carriers that way, you're going to be shocked on, you know, on how productive you can be, how profitable you can be, and the types of relationships you can build. I mean, guys, this is really simple stuff. I mean, all I'm talking about is tell them the truth. You know, be honest with them. Pay them on time. Don't string them out. Clearly communicate the details of your load. You know, make sure you give all the details, pickup times and addresses and all the details and all the nuances of the load. You know, here's another really simple one, guys. tell the drivers and dispatchers thank you. Tell them they did a great job. Show some appreciation when somebody does a good job. You'll be shocked how far that goes. And here's a really simple one, guys. When a carrier or a driver bails you out or goes above and beyond, right? And he really does something great, buy him a pizza, buy him lunch. You'll be shocked how far that goes to developing a relationship and building a relationship that can be long-term as opposed to always having to recruit new carriers because you treat them poorly. So that's another huge mistake. Number 3, this one I thought was hysterical. Begging for business. This is one that drives me absolutely crazy. And so this picture I thought was spot on. It says, family kidnapped by ninjas need $4 for karate lessons. I can tell you that I have worked, met, interviewed, hired literally hundreds of brokers and agents in my life. And I can tell you, I've also met, interviewed, and hired many, many other salespeople in other industries. And one of the things that drives me absolutely crazy is when people beg for business. And what I mean by that is this, no one likes a beggar. No one likes a beggar, right? You have to learn to have a strong posture. You have to be confident. Now, again, there's a difference between confident and arrogant. So there's a fine line there. You have to be careful. But the posture that you carry and your confidence is a huge part of how you present yourself. Another thing about not begging for the business is you have to respect their time, the shipper's time. Say, for example, it's a traffic manager or a load planner or a logistics manager, whoever it is. Of course, you have to respect their time, but you have to make them respect your time as well. So rather than playing phone tag, you have to learn to set strong appointments, and you have to learn to position yourself as if your time is valuable as theirs. If you want their respect, you have to give respect, but you also have to ask for it. So respect their time, but make them respect yours as well. And always remember something. When somebody is buying something from you, I don't care if it's logistics, I don't care if it's what it is, if it's a computer, if it's, whatever it is, no matter what you're buying, they're not buying the product, they're buying you. When a salesman sells something to somebody, they're really buying you. And so you have to understand that positioning and that posture and that confidence is a really, really important ingredient. I can tell you right now, if you think back over your life, you've probably had a salesperson that tried to reach out to you to try to sell you something who wasn't very confident, and you probably didn't buy from them. The fact is. So, and because they were begging too much, So, and then on the other side, you can probably think about times when you've met salespeople that are very confident, very competent, and you did buy from them because you had a level of comfort and trust. And another important thing about begging for the business is this. You have to understand something. I get asked this, I can tell you, if not every day, multiple times per week. Dennis, can you give me a script that will help me get new shippers, right? A sales script that will help me get new shippers. Well, here's what I'm going to tell you. I could write the perfect script and I could hand it to you right now. And if you called 100 people and I called 100 people, we're going to get vastly different results. And the reason why that is because it's not always what you say, it's how you say it. It's your tone, it's your posture, it's your voice inflection. It's a lot of how you say things, not just what you say. Really important differentiation there. You have to understand the difference between how to say something and not just what you're saying, okay? Lastly, you'll always have to remember, you want their business, but you don't need their business. If they ever sense that you're desperate or that you're in need of their business to pay your car payment, to pay your mortgage payment, to pay the rent at the office, or to pay your phone bill, or whatever the case may be, if they ever sense that you need them more than they need you, you've lost automatically. So you have to make sure that you focus in on those things. So begging for business is a huge thing. I've talked about this before in different blog posts. I've talked about it on Facebook. I've talked about it in different, webinars and things that I've done. Huge, huge mistake. Let's move on to number 4. All right, let me get a breath here. All right, number 4 this is a real pet peeve of mine. This is something that's, that I can tell you goes hand in hand with begging for the business, and that is this: focusing on being the cheapest. There is an epidemic that goes on in different industries. The freight industry is one of them, where new salespeople, newer people to the industry, whether they be newer brokers or newer agents, feel as though they have to be the cheapest in order to get the business. And it is a huge mistake. There's a picture here that sums it up. It says, the bitterness of poor quality remains long after the sweetness of low price is forgotten. What does that mean? That means that, if you focus exclusively on price and then you get poor service, why would you be surprised? Why are you surprised? I mean, the fact is cheapest is rarely, if ever, synonymous with the best. And, you'll never make any money, and thus you'll never survive as a broker if you're focused on trying to make $25 or $50 a load. It just will not work long term. Okay? So I can tell you from a personal perspective, how I built my brokerage was this. I was never the cheapest, and I focused on specifically not being the cheapest. We built our business and we made our money by not being the cheapest. Now, we weren't always the most expensive, but when I would talk to a prospect in one of the early conversations with them, I would get it out of the way pretty quick. And I would say, listen, Joe, if price is your number one concern, then I'm probably not your guy. And the reason why I did that is because if he continued to talk, if he continued to ask questions or show interest or curiosity, I knew at that point that there was more to it than price. It was important that he appreciated service and that he appreciated relationships. And the people that said, yeah, Dennis, you know what, really, it's all about price around here, I would simply say, hey, listen, I really appreciate it, Joe, but I am definitely not your guy. If you ever run into a situation where you're more concerned or you have a balance of concern about price and service, and you want a relationship with somebody long-term that can really help you create some predictability and improve your service, then let's talk. But right now, I don't think I'm your guy. And I would back out, because what I'd rather do is I'd rather go find somebody who appreciates the value of value, which is the variable between price and service. And, I'd much rather find that person, because that's the type of person that you can build a long-term relationship with. There's an old adage, win on price, lose on price. Win on relationship. The only time you lose that business is if the relationship goes sour. So really important that you understand that focusing on being the cheapest is a huge, huge, huge mistake. Okay? All right. So let's touch on number 5. But before we do that, I want to do a quick poll with you guys. So if you guys could respond in the chat box, that would be awesome. That would be great if you could respond in the chat box. So here you go, guys. How's the pace of this webinar so far? Type in the box, A, B, C, D, E. I'm way too fast, or I'm a bit too fast, or I'm about right. I'm too slow, or I'm way too slow. Sometimes I feel as though I'm going so fast, I don't even remember, what the last thing I said was. Thank God we have the slides here. But I did want to just give a quick poll from everybody to kind of get a sense to see what everybody's thinking here. So, all right, so type in the chat box there and click submit, and it'll let me know what the response is. And so, all right, so we got a few of these coming in. We've got a little bit fast, about right, a bunch of about rights, a little bit fast. So here's what I'm going to do, guys. I think I'm pretty good with the pace here, and I want to make sure that we're able to get this done in a reasonable amount of time. I don't want you to spend an hour and a half or 2 hours on this thing. I want to get this thing wrapped up, and we're pretty close to halfway through. I think number 5 is up here. So we're going to move on to the next one here. So I appreciate everybody that responded. Thank you for doing that. I greatly appreciate it. All right, number 5. Over-promising and under-delivering. This is a big one, Now, I know I keep saying that because we've been talking about all the different mistakes, but as these come up, I remember, as I was building my brokerage where these situations came up and how I used this as a big platform to build my business and to grow a culture around my company. And so over promising and under delivering. There's a funny picture here. It says, I always go the extra mile. My restraining order says I have to. I thought that was funny because, a lot of times, in the brokerage business, people will over promise and under deliver. And, it was rampant. When I first got started, one of the primary reasons why I decided to join, start a business in the logistics industry was because I saw a total lackluster approach to customer service. And so when I came in and set up my business, I chose to take on the motto of under promise and over deliver. So that means, if I told them it was going to be, it was going to deliver at 7 p.m., then I knew, that it was definitely going to get there a little bit before that, and it was definitely going to be on time. I didn't tell them 7 and then it showed up at 8, because that's, again, what you don't want to do in this industry. So, smart brokers adopt the under promise and over deliver philosophy. Don't tell people what they want to hear. Tell them the truth and make sure to set honest and realistic expectations. And when I say that, I mean, do that with your customers, do that with your carriers, do that with your brokers, do that with your employees, do that with everybody, because it's really important that you understand, that under promise and over deliver is the way to go. All right. So we're going to jump on to number 6. And number 6 is hiring too soon. This is one that some people don't really think about as a mistake, but I can tell you, excuse me, sorry guys, I'm just getting over a cold here. But hiring too soon can be a huge mistake. So here's a couple of pieces. You see the image over here, it says cash flow is king. You always hear the old expression, cash is king. The reality is cash is not king. Cash flow is king. Okay? So hiring too soon, what do I mean by that? A lot of times you'll get somebody who will start a business, and whether this is in the brokerage industry or whatever industry, and they'll go out and they'll hire a full-time employee and they'll pay him $30 or $40 or $50,000, and it will cause a cash flow issue. When the reality is a part-time employee or maybe even a subcontractor or independent contractor would have worked better and prevented cash flow issues. There's a study out there that I read recently that shows that 82% of businesses fail predominantly because of cash flow problems. Okay? Cash flow problems, right? So hiring too soon can cause serious cash flow issues, particularly if you haven't figured out how to make money as a solopreneur or as a sole proprietor first, okay? The fact is, startups don't go out of business because of a lack of profit. They typically go out of business because of a lack of cash flow. Okay? Very important that you understand that. Don't hire too soon. Number 7. Wow. Here's another big one. This is one I've talked about a lot on my blog. It's one that I've written about. It's one that I talked about on Facebook. I talk about this a lot. Letting the fear of failure hold you back. All right. So I'm going to get real with you guys here. There's a quote here by Robert Kiyosaki. You can see right here on this image. Winners are not afraid of losing, but losers are. Failure is part of the process of success. People who avoid failure also avoid success. The fact is, if you've never failed, you've never succeeded either. It's impossible to have one without the other. Here's a couple of famous failures that you guys might want to pay attention to. Albert Einstein, the guy couldn't speak until he was 4 years old, and he was told by people that he would never amount to much. Boy, glad he didn't listen, right? Walt Disney, got fired because they said he had a lack of imagination and no original ideas. Walt Disney, the most prolific storyteller in history, created a company that's worth multi-billion dollars, had a vision, did not let the fear of failure or what other people thought stop him. Oprah Winfrey, this is a funny one, right? Oprah, you know, was demoted and told that she was not a fit for television. Became a billionaire in the media industry because of her television shows and the production company that she built, Harpo. Michael Jordan was cut from his high school basketball team. Michael Jordan, probably, arguably the best basketball player of all times, was cut from his high school basketball team, but he didn't let failure hold him back. Steve Jobs built a company and was then fired as the CEO of that company, went into depression, but finally emerged because he was bound and determined to not let failure hold him back. In the Beatles, that was a little bit before my time, but they were told that they have no future in show business. And all of these people are famous failures. So the fact is, if you've never failed, you've never tried anything new. All right. So here's some suggestions. Stop negative self-talk. In the back of your mind, you hear that voice all the time. You can't do it. You don't have any experience. Who do you think you are? Take that negative self-talk. You've got to get rid of it. Right? You have to remember something. You always learn more from losing than from winning. Winning teaches you nothing. Okay? Winning teaches you nothing. Losing teaches you everything. It allows you to take a closer look at where your weaknesses are, and what you need to improve on. And then you can take that and propel that into wins. Okay? And the fact is any worthwhile achievement or goal is just on the other side of fear. It's just on the other side of your comfort zone. And there's an acronym that I like to, an acronym for the term fear that I like to use. Fear stands for fake evidence appearing real. Fear is in our minds. Okay, so letting the fear of failure hold you back is one of the biggest mistakes. There are people on this webinar right now. Maybe it's you. Okay, maybe it's you. You're going to let fear hold you back. Don't let it do that. Don't let fear be the determining factor on whether you start your freight brokerage business or whether you become a successful freight broker or agent. The fact is, if you never try, you're guaranteed to fail. All right. So number 8, not utilizing LinkedIn to grow your business. I hear a lot of people talking about cold calling and things of that nature. And, I've generated millions and millions of dollars with cold calling in my career and have built several companies using cold calling. But the fact is that the buyer's process has changed, particularly over the last 10 to 15 years. With the proliferation of the internet and social media and digital marketing and things of that nature, what you got to understand is the buying process has changed. Here's some stats from LinkedIn. 5.4 people are now involved in the average B2B buying decision. 75% of B2B buyers now use social media to be more informed on vendors. And pay close attention, 90% of decision makers say they never respond to a cold outreach. And I'm one of those guys, okay? You could never cold call me. I've never bought anything on a cold call. So the fact is that, LinkedIn, if you're not familiar with LinkedIn, LinkedIn is the largest professional networking site in the world. There's over 433 million users. That was the last statistic that I read. 433 million users worldwide. It's like Facebook, but it's all professional. You're not going to see what people ate. You're not going to see funny memes and jokes. It's very professional. It's all about business networking. You can quickly and easily connect with shippers and carriers and agents and salespeople and dispatchers. People in the US and Canada and Mexico, all over the country, all over the world. There are 433 million users worldwide, but I think there's like over 100 or 120 million just in the US alone. Okay. And LinkedIn was a huge platform for me. One of the things we did is we gathered sales intelligence, not only on our existing customers, but our prospects. So we would look at their profile. From that profile, we would gather information like where they went to school and how long they've been in their job, and who are people that they're connected with, what types of things do they read, what groups do they belong to. There's a whole bunch of sales intelligence that you can gather by looking at at a buyer's profile on LinkedIn that will automatically convert that from a cold call into a warm call by educating yourself. Okay. So, I'm not going to get into LinkedIn, but I can tell you this. This was a major platform for my logistics company. We used LinkedIn to generate over $20 million in new business for the brokerage business just using LinkedIn. Okay, so it was a huge, huge platform for us. I don't have time to get into training and all that now. I do a lot of consulting and training on LinkedIn, but ultimately that's not something that we can dive into now. But it's a huge mistake if you're not using LinkedIn to grow your business, okay? Number 9. All right, here we are. We're getting close. Oh, I love this one. This is one that I love. Waiting for the perfect time to get started. And I put perfect in quotes. And if you could see me right now, I did air quotes. Waiting for the perfect time to get started. Here's what I'm going to tell you guys. There's a couple things. There's an old saying that I heard, and it says, if you wait for all the lights to turn green in the morning before you leave for work, you're sure to be late. I want you to think about that for a second. Okay? The perfect time would be all the lights being green, right? But if you wait for all the lights to turn green in the morning before you head to work, you're sure to be late. All right? The fact is there is no such thing as the perfect time. Okay? There's a George Patton, General Patton had a quote that I read years ago. It said, a good plan today, violently executed, is better than a perfect plan tomorrow. So a good plan today, violently executed, is better than a perfect plan tomorrow. Okay? So I put this picture in here because I thought it was awesome because it's the example of perfect timing. But can you imagine how hard it was to capture that exact scene where this girl is sitting in the sand in the beach and all of a sudden the water comes over and before it hits her, they snap the photo? You know how hard that is? It's almost impossible. Here's a couple of other photos that I thought were interesting, right? Here's a kid. Talk about perfect timing. All of a sudden, this, apparently it's some sort of a moth or some sort of a bug, lands on his face and a part of his wing that looks like an eye lands right in his eye, right? How is that for perfect timing? That's once in a lifetime. You guys have to understand that you don't have to wait for the perfect time to start your business. Now is the perfect time. Remember, a good plan today, violently executed, is better than a perfect plan tomorrow. Here's a couple of other photos that I thought you might like. Wow, that's a great one, isn't it? That's an awesome photo. I thought that was really, really cool. Another one, check that out. Throwing the baby up in the air and a stork is flying over. Isn't that crazy? That's very cool. I love that. And here's another one. Look at the perfect timing, right? It looks like check out the picture. If you're not paying attention, look at the picture here on the screen. It looks like all these birds are being released from this jar that he has, right? Very, very cool. But what you have to understand is this. You don't have to wait for the perfect time. Start your business sooner as opposed to later so you can learn and then thus evolve the business. Because the fact is that there are going to be obstacles. There's going to be struggles, right? You'll overcome them. You'll learn how to get past those hurdles, all right? So, and here's the last one. This one I thought was really interesting. Her leg is replacing her head because she's doing some sort of a gymnastics move and she's got her head tilted back and her leg up over her head and thus it replaced it. So, understand that there is no such thing as the perfect time, right? That's number 9. And number 10 is forgetting to invest in yourself. Anybody recognize this guy on the screen? Well, his name is Warren Buffett. He's one of the most prolific investors in American history. He's a multi-billionaire. And here's his quote. It says, investing in yourself is the best thing you can do. Anything that improves your own talents, nobody can take it away, or nobody can tax it or take it away from you. They can run up huge deficits and the dollar can become worth far less. You can have all kinds of things happen, but if you've got talent yourself and you've maximized your talent, you've got a tremendous asset that can return tenfold. Investing in yourself. I can tell you that I'm a huge believer in investing in myself. I've literally invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in personal development myself, okay, in developing myself as an individual, as a business leader, as an executive, as a CEO, as a logistics professional, as a public speaker, as someone who understands technology. I've invested, as a matter of fact, before I started my brokerage back in 2003, I invested over $10,000 with a well-known consultant with over 20 years of logistics experience to fly to Buffalo and spend a week with me to poke holes in my business plan. And, that was before I ever got started, before I ever moved my first load. I invested over $10,000. So, I'm a huge believer in investing in yourself. The great part is that this day and age, you don't have to invest $10,000 just to get started. The other way I would suggest you become an investor is to become a reader or a listener, right? Make a goal of learning something new every day. Become a student of your business. Become a student of successful people. Study guys like Warren Buffett. Study guys, like, Elon Musk. Study guys like, Bill Gates and all these different successful business owners, executives, entrepreneurs. Study these guys, and what you're going to find is they have a lot of things in common. So become a student not only of your business, but of successful people, all right? And most importantly, get trained, okay? Get trained by someone who has already been successful. Don't be fooled by people who teach what they've never actually done. Please don't take it the wrong way, guys, but there are a lot of charlatans online. There are a lot of people who pose as successful freight brokers, freight brokerage owners that are out there trying to train people on how to become successful freight brokers. And the fact is, they've never built a successful freight brokerage. They're trying to sell training on something that they've never actually done. Find somebody that has been successful, that has documented, proven success. All right? And then use them as your mentor. Use them as the bridge to bring you from where you are now to where you want to be, which is a successful freight broker or freight agent. Okay? So those are the top 10. But listen, don't disappear, guys, because here's the deal. I'm going to be doing, I forgot to mention this, I'm going to be doing a live Q&A. I'm going to be doing a live Q&A at the end of this. And I'm also going to have a special bonus offer for anybody that sticks around to the very end. So I'm going to be jumping into a live Q&A here very shortly, but just know something. If you stick around for the live Q&A, also you're going to qualify for a special bonus offer that you are definitely not going to want to miss, okay? So at this point, some of you are considering about, how can I become a successful freight broker or freight agent? So it's a perfect time to segue into what exactly is FreightBrokerBootcamp.com. Okay, Freight Broker Bootcamp has served over 3,700 students. We've trained over 3,700 students since 2006 and is known as the most comprehensive and cost-effective freight broker and freight agent training program online today. It includes everything you need to know to get your business up and running in 30 days or less. All the training, all the contracts, all the forms, all the information, all the tools, everything you need to get up and running. And the investment is only $98 for a 6-month membership. There's no recurring charges. There's no monthly recurring charges. Just know that it's $98 one time, and you have access to the training for 6 full months, okay? And last but not least, I offer a 60-day, 100% money-back guarantee. No questions asked. Just shoot an email, request a refund, and we'll refund 100% of your purchase price. No questions asked. Okay, so that's a little bit about Freight Broker Bootcamp. Some of you that are curious about it, feel free, you can check that out. And for those of you that are live on this webinar, that are attending this streaming webinar now, again, I told you we were going to have a special offer. So here is the special offer for webinar attendees only, okay? So if you're live or streaming on this event, I'm going to offer you a $1 trial membership. $1. okay, which will give you 3 days full access to my training program online. It's all web-based. You log in and you can review and do all the materials at your own pace, at your own time. And after the 3-day trial, you'll be charged the remaining $97. I cannot make it any easier than that. You invest $1, you get to lift up the hood, kick the tires, check it all out. And if for some reason you're not happy during that 3 days, just send an email to cancel your trial membership. You'll never be charged the other money. Okay. And after 3 days, you'll be charged the $97 for a total of $98, and you'll have full access to that training for 6 full months. But I got to be honest, guys, I have to limit this to the first 30 people to get registered today while on this webinar. Okay. So if you're sitting here right now saying, I'm definitely going to do it, go to freightbrokertrial.com or click the Access Now button, or there's some button here on the webinar that you'll see that will allow you to click it and access that page to get registered. I'm only going to allow 30 new members at this price under this trial. Okay. I have to limit it. I have to be fair to everybody. And, as a part of this also, I'm going to give away to one lucky member that enrolls today during the webinar. I'm going to give away a 1-hour free phone consultation to one new member who joins before the end of this webinar. So I'm going to take one of those 30 people that enrolls. I'm going to randomly pick one person, and I'm going to do a 1-hour free phone consultation to one new member who joins before the end of this webinar. Okay. So if you're interested in that free trial, go to just go to freightbrokertrial.com. You can see it right here on the screen, www.freightbrokertrial.com, or there's a button over here on the left or right hand side of the webinar where it says Access Now. If you click on it, it will pull up the order form where you can go through it. It'll only take you about 2 minutes. You complete the $1 registration, and you literally have instant access to the training for the complete training information for 3 full days. Okay. So now we're going to jump into a couple of things that I thought you guys, when I buy something online, I always like to read the reviews and testimonials and those sorts of things. So I figured I would save you a little bit of time. Here's a recent review from Greg Wallace on Facebook. This is by far the best individual I've come across to continue my freight brokerage training or further my education. He's totally awesome. I've taken classes with another for an exceptionally more amount, and I wish I'd come across Dennis ahead of time. Thank you, Mr. Brown, for the greatness in giving back. That's Gregory Wise. Just recently here in January, he posted that as a review testimonial for Freight Broker Bootcamp. Here's another one. Claudette Hedman. Freight Broker Bootcamp is #1. Great training materials and tools, easy to follow. The training is also a great morale booster as well. I like the videos, the way the training breaks things down into easy to understand concepts. The program prepares one for the industry and places one in the right frame of mind to pursue this career to its fullest. Your passion and enthusiasm is contagious. Look forward to more live weeks on Facebook. Thanks, from Claudette. Another one, Catherine Kuntz. Great training. It's great. You can work at your own pace. So far, it's the best online training I've had. Lots of knowledge with so much detail that anyone can understand everything. Another one is from Peter. Freight Broker Bootcamp is full of insightful information, not only for freight brokers, but also for carriers like me trying to grow more business. Thank you, Mr. Brown, for sharing. And last but not least, Richard Spring, it says, true story. Dennis, I was fortunate to be a Tennessee state champion auctioneer and an international championship participant. Nothing moves much faster than the auction block. A dear friend, Lynn Howard, whose father was a Hall of Famer auctioneer in Tennessee, mentioned, I'm running 10 reefers brokered with someone else. Let's get into the freight brokering. We went to a course, her 4,800, me in Atlanta 2000. Lynn, check this out, Freight Broker Bootcamp. Wow, this will work. Thanks, Dennis. We're on our way. And then the comment below this was Richard said, could have saved $6,700 by going with Freight Broker Bootcamp. We'll make it up. Thanks, FB Bootcamp. So those are a few recent testimonials from students that have taken my course and have participated in my trainings. And so now I'm going to jump into the live Q&A. All right. So guys, here we are. We're going to jump into the live Q&A. So it's really important. You guys, hopefully you have been getting your questions ready all along. And so for those of you that are, have some questions here, make sure you stick around here. But for those of you that are looking to get enrolled, okay, you need to go to freightbrokertrial.com and get enrolled in that $1 trial membership before the end of this webinar. Once this webinar is over, I'm going to close that page down. The cart's going to close and you won't have access to the $1 trial membership. Now, you'll always be able to enroll, at freightbrokerbootcamp.com for $98, the normal price, but you won't have access to that trial membership, okay? That's a huge benefit. You can try it, invest $1, go through it for 3 days, and if you're not happy, cancel it, and it costs you nothing, okay? So with that in mind, for those of you that have questions, start popping them into the chat box down there. Below the video here, there's a chat box down there. Type your questions in, make sure you're detailed, and hit submit. I'm going to start getting the questions. The questions are already starting to roll in. But really important that you guys remember something. I'm only offering 30 seats at this price. Only 30 students are going to get access at this price, okay? So I'm going to pay attention and be refreshing my browser to keep you posted on how many people have enrolled. And we've already got a couple of people that have already enrolled in the training, a few people that have already enrolled. So if you're serious about it, get enrolled now. So the questions are rolling in. So question number 1 is this. Do you offer support as a part of your Freight Broker Bootcamp training? Okay, great question. Thank you, Maureen. So Maureen is asking, do you offer support at Freight Broker Bootcamp, the online training? Yes, of course we do. Now, training is done typically by email, and we have a customer support portal where what happens is you'll submit the questions, and then we'll get back to you in 24 to 48 hours online. If for some reason we feel as though that it makes a lot more sense, we'll actually pick up the phone, we'll call you direct, and we'll go over that answer to make sure that we get that resolved for you. But support is done via email. So 24 to 48 hours, during normal business hours is when we respond to those questions, and we get back to everybody in a timely manner. So just know you'll be fully supported in your venture, all right? Next question. What if I'm not happy with the online course? Okay, well, John, that's a great question. And I think I just shared that with you. And as a matter of fact, on the screen here, we talks about the 60-day, 100% money back guarantee. If for whatever reason, if you get into the trial membership and you're not happy in the first 3 days, you can cancel and you'll never be charged the additional $97. But let's say, for example, you're into this 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 weeks, you're earlier than 60 days. And for some reason, something changes and you're just not going to do it. And you're not happy with the training. Right? You send an email and we'll give you a 100% refund of the $98 that you paid. Very, very simple. We have a 97% customer satisfaction rate. 97 we only have a 3% refund rate out of all of our customers that we've had well over 3,000 customers. So we're not worried. If you're not happy, we'll give your money back. Okay. So no worry about that. Okay, here's another question from Jim. Jim says, do I have to have a license or a bond to become a freight agent? Okay, Jim, I'm glad you asked this question. It's a really good question because there's a lot of confusion there. Freight brokers have to have a freight broker authority, which requires a freight broker bond. So as a licensed freight broker, you have to have an authority in order to operate in the United States, which gives you the permission to move freight, to broker freight, okay? Now, a freight agent is not required to have a bond, not required to have an authority, not required to take any tests. All he has to do is operate under a broker. So typically gets hired as an independent contractor under a licensed freight broker. So the answer to that is this. No, you do not need a bond or an authority or a license. You do not need to take a test as a freight agent. All you need to do is get hired as an independent contractor under a licensed freight broker. So thanks for that question. Great question. I know there's a lot of people who are probably thinking that. All right. Another question. Should I start as a freight agent or as a freight broker? This is a really good question and it's a hard one to answer, but I'm going to give you my advice. If you're new to the industry, and you don't have a whole lot of entrepreneurial experience, I strongly suggest you start out as a freight agent. Why? Because it's easier. there's less headaches, there's less overhead, there's less risk, and you can still make a lot of money. Guys, my average agent the last year that we were in business, I think we made over $107,000 working from home. Now, I'm not promising you or guaranteeing you or telling you that you're going to make that, but here's what I'm telling you, that if one guy can do it, you can do it. All right. So, you can start as a freight agent and then choose to, after 6 months or a year or 2 years, go out and get your own authority and your own bond and become your own broker. You don't need to start as a broker. Now, on the other hand, if you're already an entrepreneurial person, you're comfortable with entrepreneurism, being an entrepreneur, if you're comfortable with the trucking or logistics industry, maybe you already have your carrier authority, or maybe you're an owner operator, or maybe you've got 10 trucks and you're looking to just open your own brokerage, it probably makes more sense for you to get your authority. So I would leave that up to you, but ultimately, I want you to understand, I want everybody to understand, you do not need to start as a broker, which is going to dramatically decrease your investment to get started, as well as your risk, and as well as the fact, excuse me, as you're getting started, I apologize again, I'm just getting over this cold. If you can't make money as an agent, you're definitely not going to make money as a broker. So once you learn how to make money as an agent, you start building a customer base, you will always have the option at that point to convert over as a broker later. Okay? All right. Another question is, can I be a broker or an agent part-time? I get this question a lot. And I understand why, because a lot of people have full-time jobs, and some people have multiple full-time jobs, or full-time job and a part-time job, or husband and wife both work, or whatever the case may be. And the answer to that is this. Yes, you can do it part-time, but you can't do it in your spare time, at least not to any degree of success. The key to this is this. You have to be able to access the internet and make and take phone calls during normal business hours. And shipping hours are typically, between 7 a.m. and let's call it, 5 or 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Those are the typical hours for shipping. So if you can make and take calls and access the internet, even if it's from your phone or your laptop, if you're on the road or wherever you are, you can do this business part-time. It's a little harder because obviously you have to multitask, but I know people that have done it, and I know people that have made thousands and thousands of dollars a month doing it part-time. But the fact is that that's something you would have to determine. You'd have to have access to the internet and be able to make and take calls during normal business hours. If you work all day long and you can't do that, and you think you're going to do this at night, it's not going to work. The reason being is because you're not going to be able to get a hold of carriers, and you're not going to be able to get a hold of shippers at night, here in the States, because they typically close their operations. Most people don't work overnight when they're in the shipping and manufacturing, okay? So what other questions? Wow, lots of questions coming in here. Holy cow. Let me see. Okay, I've got a few trucks. I own a trucking company. Can I open a brokerage? How can opening a brokerage help me make more money? Okay, great. So if you're a carrier, whether you're an owner operator or you own a handful of trucks, and you want to increase your revenue and your profit, here's a great way to do it. Add a brokerage. Because let's say, for example, let's do the math. Let's say you have 5 trucks. Okay, you got 5 vans. That means in any given day, you can only be moving 5 loads, okay? Unless they're super short runs where you're, day cabbing it and you're doing multiple local movements in a local area, right? But typically, if you're doing over-the-road trucking, you can only move, if you have 5 vans, you can only be moving 5 loads in any given day. And if those loads take 2, 3, 4 days, it ties up your truck, okay? So let's say, for example, you're doing business with a shipper that's doing moving 100 loads a day. But you can only load 5 of your trucks at any given point. If you load your trucks first, and then you developed a relationship of being a good service provider for that shipper, you might be able to get some of these other loads. You might be able to get another 5 loads a day that you broker out to other carriers. So you could literally double your business, your revenue, by adding a brokerage division. And it's just not that hard. So, that's part of a lot of people that take my course are people who are carriers and owner operators that are looking to add brokerage as a way to add bottom line, add more profit to their bottom line. So very good question, Mark. Appreciate that question. I truly appreciate it. Mark from Dallas asked that question. Okay. All right, here's another question. How do I find carriers to haul my loads? All right, good question. This is really basic, and if you have a little bit of experience, then it's going to make sense. If you don't, bear with me. There are what's called load boards. Load boards are websites online that allow you to source carriers based upon where their truck is on any given day. So let's say, for example, you had a load. We'll take that load from Buffalo to Atlanta that I talked about earlier. Okay. I forgot to start the timer. Bummer. Well, we're not going to go another 15 minutes, but I can tell you that we're going to go. Let me do a quick check here on how many people have registered for that out of that 30 here. Just let me give you a quick update, and then I'll dive back into that question. Okay, here we go. I'm refreshing the browser here. Let me look. Okay, so we're over 20. We're over 20 people that have registered of the 30 for the $1 trial membership. Okay, so for those of you that are serious, get registered now because the 30 is not going to last. Okay, matter of fact, another one just came in, so now we just added one more. So we've probably got about 7 openings left. We've got about 7 openings left for that $1 trial membership. So if you're serious, get enrolled now because trust me, it's not going to last. By the end of this webinar, those will all be gone, okay? All right, so the question was, how do I find carriers to haul my loads? So load boards are really one of the primary ways that people find carriers. So for example, if you had a load of widgets that your customer wanted you to move from Buffalo to Atlanta and it was going to pick up tomorrow and then deliver on, say, Thursday, okay? So it was going to pick up Tuesday and deliver on Thursday. What you would do is you would go on the load board and you would type in Buffalo and you would type in the day Tuesday for equipment that's available on Thursday that's looking to go to Atlanta, and it will give you a list of carriers that meet that qualification. So there are what's called load boards that allow you to find carriers that are interested in hauling the lanes and types of loads that you have. It's a great tool. That's one great way that you find carriers. Another way is there's online directories that you can call different carriers based upon where they're located or different lanes that they run. You know, you can also connect and find carriers on LinkedIn and social media. There are a lot of different ways, but one of the primary ways that you'll find carriers as a new broker or new agent is through load boards, okay? So good question. Awesome question. All right, so let's keep going here. All right, so what is a fair and realistic commission rate for a new agent? Okay, so I mentioned at the beginning of this webinar that agents get paid a percentage of the gross profit. So let me tell you what that means. We're going to go over that example again. We're running a load from Buffalo to Atlanta. The customer is paying us $1,500. We pay a carrier $1,300, which creates $200 in what we call gross margin. Okay, gross profit. Now, as an agent, you typically get paid somewhere between 50 and 70% of the profit. So that would mean 50% of 200 is 100, right? And 70% of 200 is 140. So you get somewhere between $100 and $140 for that one load. Now, newer agents are typically going to probably get more on the 50 side. More experienced agents who have an established book of business can get as high as 70% of that profit. So that's the typical commission range that you're going to see for a freight agent. New agents are probably going to be closer to 50, and more experienced agents are going to get 60 and 70%. So good question, Rochelle. Thank you for that question. Rochelle from Chicago. Great job. Thank you for the question. So what software do I need to get started? This is another question I get a lot. As a matter of fact, after this webinar, if you go on my blog, freightbrokerbootcamp.com/blog, and then you type in the search box software, I wrote an article with the top 10 freight broker softwares. But here's what I can tell you. To get started, you're going to need a load board. Chances are at least one load board. You're going to need some sort of dispatch software or transportation management software, which is also part of that blog post that I did. You're going to need something for billing to create invoices so you can invoice your shippers. You really don't need a lot. It's very, very simple. The barrier to entry to become a freight broker or a freight agent is very, very low. Okay, so it's not, you don't have to be an IT pro or a techno wizard in order to become a broker or an agent. All you need to do is be able to know how to surf the internet a little bit, and do a little bit of data entry. And these programs that they use are very, very simple. Okay. All right. So let's keep going here. What other questions do we have? Do you do one-on-one consulting with brokers? Okay. I get this question all the time, and unfortunately I don't, guys. I just don't have the time. I still own multiple businesses. You'd be shocked at what my schedule looked like. I don't do one-on-one consulting, variety of reasons. Number one, it could be a conflict of interest with my old company, that I sold recently. Secondly, to be extremely honest with you, you probably can't afford it. When I do consulting, business consulting, marketing consulting, things of that nature, I charge, my rates range anywhere between $500 and $1,000 an hour. So please don't take it the wrong way, but I don't do one-on-one consulting. The training that I do is an online course. Freight Broker Bootcamp is an online course that allows you to go at your own pace. It's not instructor-led. All the material is there for you to go through and to learn, and you have access to it 24/7. You don't have to wait for an instructor or wait for a certain day or time. You can do it whenever you want, okay? And again, we've had over 3,700 students go through the training. We've got a 97% customer satisfaction rate, and we also offer a 60-day, 100% money-back guarantee. So pretty tough to beat, okay? Okay, so let's see. We're wrapping up here. Let me see. What time is it? Oh my gosh, we gotta wrap this thing up. I know there's more questions coming in. Let me see what else we got here. Can you tell me how factoring works? Okay, factoring. Wow, this is another question I get quite a bit. Okay, so how does factoring work? Okay, so a lot of people, when they start a freight brokerage, they don't have a lot of money. They think they need $100,000 or $200,000 or $300,000 to start a freight brokerage, and you really, really don't. You need very little of your own capital in order to start a freight brokerage. So there are what's called factoring companies, which will basically loan you money against an invoice. So that shipper load that we moved from Buffalo to Atlanta for $1,500, we paid the carrier $1,300. We made $200 in profit. Remember how that works, okay? So what would happen is, normally you would have to pay that carrier $1,300 before you were ever paid by the shipper. So most carriers want you to pay them in anywhere from 1 to 30 days, and shippers are typically going to pay you somewhere between 21 and 60 days, depending upon the shipper. And so you have a negative cash flow. But what happens with factoring is they're kind of like a bank. They come in, and what they'll do is they'll loan you money against that $1,300. So they'll pay that carrier up front for you, the $1,300. And then what will happen is, after the shipper pays the bill, what will happen is they'll pay you the remaining of that $200 in profit, minus a fee that ranges anywhere between, let's call it 1% and 4%, right? Somewhere in that range that they keep for their services. So if it was 4% on $200, literally they're going to keep $8 or 4% on a $1,500 load. That would be $60, right? So they would keep $60 as a service fee for financing that. You'd still make $140, right? So factoring companies are like banks that allow you to cash flow your business. It allows you to pay your carriers on time, and it still allows you to make a healthy profit on the back end based upon the margin that you're creating. So, the nuts and bolts of this is this. If you're sitting here on this webinar right now and you're saying, I just don't have the capital, I don't have the finances, I don't have an investor, you don't need a lot of capital or an investor. There are factoring companies all over the place that if you have good shippers, that they will factor your invoices, because all they're going to do is, they'll factor it and they'll make a fee. It happens all the time. So don't let the lack of investment dollars prevent you from starting as a freight broker. And if for some reason you don't want to deal with factoring, just become an agent. Then you don't have to worry about it. Then the brokerage is going to be responsible for taking care of paying the carriers and taking care of doing all that. Okay. So, all right, so I got one question, and then I'm going to close on this question, guys. I got to wrap it up. So for those of you that are still interested in that freight broker trial, I think we have 3 left, and they're going to go quick. So go to freightbrokertrial.com, get enrolled, and or up in the top right or left-hand side here, there's going to be a button that says Get Access Now. Click it and get enrolled now. Otherwise, you're going to miss that opportunity. Again, you'll always be able to enroll later under the normal $98, but as far as the trial membership, I can only offer $30 at this time. So the last question is, how does the $1 trial membership work? Okay, let me explain this one more time. If you're one of the 30 people that I allow to enroll as a trial member, you pay $1 upfront and you get a membership where you have access for 3 full days to the training program. You can go in, log in, lift up the hood, kick the tires, go through all the training, access all the materials, look at everything in the training. Now you're not going to be able to consume it all in that time period, but you can look at all the training. Excuse me. Again, I'm getting over a cold here. I apologize. After 3 days, you'll be charged the $97 for a total of $98, and then you'll have full access to that training for 6 full months. Okay? If during the first 3 days you're not happy for whatever reason, you just simply send an email, we'll cancel your trial membership, and you won't be charged anything else. Very simple. I cannot make it any more risk-free. Okay? I just can't make it any easier for you guys. I want you guys to take advantage of this. I want you guys to be able to check this thing out. So for those of you that are considering joining, get enrolled now. I've answered a whole bunch of questions. For those of you that I didn't get to your questions, I truly apologize. If you submit the questions, I will try to follow up via email and answer your question via email. I may not be able to get back to everybody, but I know we answered probably 15 or 20 questions during the last half an hour here. So I want to get this thing wrapped up. For those of you that are looking to get enrolled, here's what I can tell you. Again, we offer a 60-day, 100% money-back guarantee. You have absolutely nothing to lose. I can't make it any easier. But here's the most important thing. Like I said to you before, do not let fear of failure prevent you from starting a successful business. Had I let the fear of failure stop me, back in 2003, where would I be today? I've been so blessed. The first year we did $1 million in sales, and then we did $3 million, and then we did $6 million. And by the time I sold that company, we were doing over $80 million in sales. And I'm not telling you that that's what's going to happen for you, but can you imagine a year or 2 or 3 from now, if you had a business where you were doing $1 million or $2 or $3 or $4 million, and you were making $100, $200, $300,000, and you were your own boss, you controlled your own destiny, and that you were never going to be downsized. You just had total control over your future. It was something that you could will on to your kids or pass on to your kids, give them the life that they deserve. I owe a debt of gratitude to the logistics and trucking and transportation industry. I've been blessed and made millions of dollars along the way. And I can tell you this, if I can do it, you can do it. So when this timer runs out, I'm going to shut up. I'm going to log off here. But when this timer runs out, I'm going to shut off the webinar, and you will not have access to the $1 trial membership. So get enrolled now, and we'll see you on the other side.